Hi everyone, welcome to this video lesson. And yeah, let me introduce myself. So I'm Mitch Leeuwen. I'm an artist from the Netherlands, and I think I started going for professional career as an artist when I was 19, and now I'm 32. So it took me quite some time to get here where I am. And I first started at a graphical design company and then worked at some game companies. And now I'm a freelancer, and now a big part of my work is teaching. But besides that, I also work as a concept artist for animation shows and also for toys. I did some comic work and yeah, all kinds of different things, and that's cool. As an artist, you can work at so many different things because everything needs to be designed. So there's a lot of work, but you need to get at a certain level to get work. So I made this book to help people get that jump start to pick up some things that they can start learning and develop so they can become an artist themselves. So yeah, that's me as working as an artist, and I'm working in Adobe Photoshop, and I always worked in that from when I was a teenager. I already worked in Photoshop, so for me it's totally naturally to keep working in that, and it's I think it's one of the best drawing programs. But there are more drawing programs out there. There are even some free drawing programs, so yeah, go Google them and find what you like. And I don't think it really matters which program you use. It's just what which drawing program do you like to use yourself? What are you most comfortable with? And with me, that's Adobe Photoshop. So if you are following this book or my Patreon, starting in a sketchbook is great. So first try to learn to draw and then pick up painting and digital drawing. And the drawing skills is way more important. And one of the best ways to learn that is by having a sketchbook. So if you don't have a fancy PC, starting in a sketchbook is totally fine. It takes time to become an artist. So here in these graphs, I show a bit what I mean with that. So when you're beginning, you start here. And then when you start drawing a lot, you start to grow and grow, and then you go faster. You go really fast. The first steps is really going, maybe it's even going faster than all these steps. So maybe you're learning a new technique here. But then at one point, you're stuck. And you don't know really how to progress. So, and at that point, you start to you struggle, but keep going, keep putting the work into it, and then you start growing again, and then you get that plateau again, and then you start learning again. So it's it's totally normal that you have some periods that goes really fast and some periods that's a bit stale, but don't give up. And one reason why that happens is because of how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive and how we look at our own art. So if blue is skill and red is our mind and our observation of our own skills, so when we're starting, we maybe think we're better than we actually are, our drawing skills. And that's fine because that gives us confidence. And because of that, we start drawing more and more. So then you start to grow and grow. And here you're starting to think, oh, I'm bad. Because you're also learning, your skills are learning, but you also learn how to look at your own work. So you start to see your own mistakes more and more. So when that's here, and you're learning how to look at your own art, then your skills are maybe a bit stable, so you can't grow anymore. But how you look at your art is growing, and you're looking at other artists and learning new things, but you don't see that back in your own art. But you start thinking of it, and because of that, your art grows more. So here you're drawing, you're getting better, and then you're stuck. And here you think you're here you're just doing it. So now I have to do it like this. So here you're starting to see how you could improve, but you don't have the skills yet. So, but because of that, because you can see where you need to grow and stuff, you can you can start learning. So what I want to say with this is that if you feel bad at your own drawing, that's a good thing, because you're starting to see that where you can learn, and just keep drawing and try to improve on those bits. And it can take some time, but in the next chapters I will talk a bit more about that. People overestimate what they can do in 1 year, and people underestimate what they can do in 10 years. So I noticed that a lot, and I myself was that as well. So in my first year, I was thinking, oh, I want to become an artist. So I really drew a lot, but there wasn't happening that much, or not as much as I would have liked. But in 5 years, maybe here, I started getting some small jobs. So so in 1 year there didn't happen much, but over time it did. So try to think of it as each step, each year is a small step, and then together it's one big mountain. So where is the sky, and this top costs maybe 10 years or maybe more. And that isn't to say that maybe at 5 years cool things can happen. That's can. But the point is that you maybe don't worry that much if there isn't happening that much in a couple of months or 1 year. Learning to draw is putting a lot of time in drawing. So one of the most important things about drawing is the action line. So the action line is this line. So what you how that works is that let me see. So for this character, for example, he's sitting. So we create an action line like this. So just a simple S line. And normally I try to use CSI. So that means there's a line like this, there's a line like an S, and there's a line like an E. And in this case, I wanted to use an S. So because, you have the head and the back, and I want to let him look upwards. So first start with an ID. So I want to create an action line of a character that is sitting on his bottom, and he's looking up in the sky. That can be your story. So we have this action line, and then you can start drawing the shapes on top of it. And with shapes, I mean, I use 3 kinds of shapes: a circle, a square, and a rectangle. And if you're drawing a character, drawing 3 balls is kind of dull. But if you're mixing up these shapes, you get a more interesting character. So, but it's not everything. There's also proportion. So if we have these 3 balls and we draw this is boring. You can make it more interesting if we do it like this. So this is more interesting. And this is actually, it looks like a snowman, but still not there yet. What we can also do is start with a big head, and then a small neck, and then a medium body. That's starting to get interesting. Or a medium head and a small neck and a big body. And that's also the rule of 3. So 3 shapes you can play around with. It gives you a lot of options, because if you have 2, you can just do big and small. But if you have 3, you have big, small, medium, and it gives you a lot more options. How you can improve this is by using these shapes. So using a triangle, a circle, and a square. And with this, you can create some character designs. And this is super basic. You use this more in a subtle way, but you could use it like this. But we could make a character out of this, a funny character. So maybe this is the body, and this is really a weird character. Oh, maybe it's a female. So with a really big dress. So this is her hair. And I think this could be a really great design of a character. So, hello. So something like this. So you can play around with these options. So what I want to say is, for when I'm drawing more a Disney style character, I work with a circle, of course, but I drawing in 3D. So it's a sphere. So it looks 3D. So if you're starting out, it's great to practice drawing these spheres like this. So, and you see, I'm drawing these lines through like it's in 3D. And then we have cubes. And then these are like this. So, and you can draw those also in 3D. And we also have cylinders. So, like this. And when I'm drawing a character, I transform those shapes a bit. For example, the cylinder can also be this. So it can also be a cone. Or the sphere doesn't have to be perfect round. It can also be something like this. Or the cube can be also wide from the top and narrow at the bottom. So I'm using these shapes to draw. So what I do here, I'm starting to have that action line, and then I put all these shapes on top. And if you're just starting out, this can maybe a bit too much. But what I would advise, maybe you can pick this character and you can start drawing it in these shapes. And first study some drawings, maybe out of this book, or maybe from something else. So here I'm also drawing the shape. So what I'm doing here, I'm also trying to think in 3D. So here putting these wireframes on top of it. So it feels more 3D. So, and here as well. So let's add this head. So, and when you have the big shapes, you can add the smaller shapes, like here. So now we're putting this cone on top of his head, and then we have his nose. And then you can draw the mouth inside that. And think of it a bit as if you're claying. So, and when you also have this circle, the sphere, you can draw these eyes on top of this ball. So, and it moves on this ball, so like this. So it's wrapped around that shape, the same as that nose and the mouth. You see, it goes on top of these balls. So what you could do to practice this is take an egg from the kitchen, and I think you can best cook it or something, or take another ball where you can draw on, and draw on that egg a face like this. So something like this. And look, if you're rotating that egg, for example, like this, look how those the drawing on top of that egg rotates. So you can and then maybe draw it on a sheet of paper like this. So you're starting to learn how to draw those 3D things and how everything's wrapped around on an egg or something. Yeah, on those things. So that's a great exercise. Taking an egg and draw something on it, a face, and then copy it on a sheet of paper from different angles. So yeah, here I'm drawing this on top of this character and adding all the shapes. So what's also important is start with the big shapes. So start with the big shapes first. So here, using this action line of a sitting character, starting with the head, the body is pear-shaped, and then add the arms, and then add the legs, then add the tail. And once you have that, then you can add all the smaller shapes on top of it. So here are more examples of action lines. So first, story. And your story can be so simple as a girl is yawning, something like that. So then we can start determine the action line. So I think so she's sitting and she's stretching her upper body. So like this. So then we have an action line like this. And on top of that action line, you can start sketching. And I use the circles and cylinders and squares. And I start sketching really rough. So like this. So her breast is going forward and her arm is going up like this. And her hand is going like this. And their other hand is going before her mouth like this. And I'm drawing these arrows for force, to think how the force goes. So here, and then this leg. What I'm also doing is that this is the simple side and this is the detailed side. So let's erase this a bit. So this is almost one line, and here is all this stuff happening. So we have a simple side and a complex side. So it's always good to have that in mind. So where is the simple side here and where's the complex side here? So I think the simple side is here, and here is the complex side. So I think this character is a bit here. This side is a bit too even. I think maybe I could have made this side a bit more simple. Maybe like this, and then add this more here. So there will be a more maybe making even this thing. So there will be more complex side here. And I do that because you want contrast in your drawings. You don't want symmetry like this. You want this. But what's even better if you do this. So don't mirror your drawings. Use asymmetry. because that feels more natural and 3D and gives your drawing more depth. So here, more construction. What's a great exercise is, for example, go to Google and search for, here I did skater girl, and then I start drawing from it. So I start with an action line, and then I draw the skateboard, and I draw the skateboard first because that's a static object. That is, it's not, it doesn't have an action line. It has it, but it's straight. So, and then I start with sketching and start adding all these construction shapes. So, and when I figured out all these construction shapes, and then I start sketching on it. So maybe here we have all these stiff shapes a bit. So when I have that, then I start making the nice sketch more on it. So getting it more lively. And so it's not, because if you're using these shapes too much, it can get stiff. So you need to find a way between this and a nice line. Because what I'm also doing here is I'm using that CSI again, but then in the lines. So I try to find, here's an C and here's an S. And so I'm trying to play around with those CSI lines. So for construction, these simple drawings are really great to practice. So just sitting character, like the fox, start with a sphere, a ball, and then a tail, and then think of it how it goes in 3D. So if you're starting out, these drawings are a great practice to do. And maybe after you mastered this pose, you can start making your pose where he's walking, or a side angle, or anything. So here. So now we have this. So yeah, and always work from big to small. And what I mean with that is just start with the big shapes and then start adding the eyes and save the details for last. Always work from big to small. Expressions. Funny thing is that there are in expressions are also these action lines. So let me show. So having this ball, and we want to make a head of it that's surprised. So what happens when you surprise? Look in a mirror and do surprised or scared. So you're stretching your head. So you can draw this action line that is stretching. So you have this mouth that's also really stretched and pulled downwards. So like this. And because of that, our nose gets a bit up. And then our eyes are also stretched. Like this here. And then our pupils, you can also stretch a bit because it's cartoony, so you can do that. If you're more realistic, you do it less. And then you can use those eyebrows are really put upwards. And if it's a bit older character, you can draw these wrinkles of skin up here. So, and then you can exaggerate that by doing the neck like this. So here and here. So we call this stretch. So think of it as well as a ball. So this ball is normal. When it's squeezed, So here we squeeze it. So squeeze, but we can also stretch it. So stretch. So you see that in animation, you have a ball, and you kick. You kick against the ball, so the ball moves up. So, but then it has speed. So now it looks. So if we draw the ball like this, it would look stiff. But if we kick the ball very hard, it would look something like this. So then it's stretched, and then it gets normal again. It loses speed, and then it gets back to the ground. So and then it also gets this shape again. But then it touches the ground, and what happens then is then it gets this force pulled here and here, so then squashed, and here it's stretched, and here it's squashed. And then, because of the force, it bounced back again, and then we have that. So that's for basic animation. But we also use that with drawing our characters in expressions, in poses, and so on. So if he's angry, it's the opposite of stretch, it's squash. So it goes like this. So his eyebrows are pulled downwards like this. So it all goes here. And then here you get these wrinkles with his nose because everything is pushed. So his head, his mouth is also pushed upwards. So we get these forces. And this is a big tip on how to get more lively emotions and poses and so on. So here we also have more expressions, and here I'm also showing that you're using these balls, like here, and then we have the chin. So basically with drawing head, I think I can explain that. So drawing head, you use this ball, then you can add this mask like this here, and then the neck. So these three shapes you can use to draw your characters. So you can also separate them: ball, cylinder, and this mask. So these three shapes shape the basic of the head. And we use that because then we can also rotate it. For example, if he's really sad, you want him to look downwards. So then you can really draw it easily in perspective. That head. So maybe it goes here, and so on. You can even push it more. For example, if he's looking upwards, you can draw this also in perspective. So then you get something like this. So using these basic shapes can help with making these hard poses be a bit more easy to draw. So it's looking upwards. So then you see his chin like this here, and the neck. So it's still hard, but it's easier because you're using these basic shapes. So that's why it's important to practice those basic shapes first. So if you're first starting out, what I would advise you is to make an action line, just a random line, and then add all these 3D shapes on top of it, like a cube, a ball, and so on. So here, and then maybe a cylinder, That's one. A ball, cylinder, of a cube again. So then you're learning to draw these balls following this shape. So this is a great exercise. And it's also showing overlap. So if you want to have more depth in your drawings, use overlap. So for example, if you have a ball and another ball, it's more interesting to put the ball here and erase it here. So there's some depth because of overlap. And in different tutorials, I explain a bit more about it. But if you can use this in your drawings, it will get more lively. For example, if an arm is going over a character and so on. So let's move on. So here are more examples of the head. Yeah, the head expressions. So think about that. Oh yeah, and also wanted to talk about, let's go back to the fox. Draw the silhouette. Make sure the silhouette is clear. For example, here you have the positive space. Positive. Let me do it like this. So positive, plus, and we have the negative space. So if you're making your character black and white with on white background, you can read if it's readable. So make sure your characters are readable. So sometimes your character isn't readable because you don't see that nose, you don't see that leg here, and only this body in here. So this is less readable. Maybe you don't see this place here. So then you try to have more balance between positive and negative space. So let's continue, because I also want to talk about painting. So let me see here if we have this. So with painting a character, here you can see that. So let me start with, maybe I can take one of these characters. So maybe, do I have a sketch here that I can use? I could use this one. There are some values on top of it, but or I actually can use this bear. Let's do this. Sorry for this. So you have this bear drawing. So let's take it. So put it here. And now we can put this on multiply. So in Photoshop, you have these layers. These are your layers in Photoshop. And you can select this layer and put this on multiply. And now we can draw behind the drawing. So I take the lasso tool and I start blocking in the shapes. And the lasso tool is this option you have in the toolbar. So here you make this big shape around this bear, like this here, and we can fill it with a color. So like this. So that's this step. So now we can start painting in the colors. What I do is then I make separate layers, for example, for the leg or for the belly and so on. So then I take here. So now we have the belly And you can also do that for the mount. And I put that on separate layers. And I do that because then I can paint in those layers. So what I do is I put the sketch lower opacity, like this, and I take my paintbrush, and I take this layer, and I put this, I select this icon, put it on, and now you can draw within the shape. So here, oh, it's going something wrong. Right, yeah, now it works. So now I can paint in this these basic lighting. So the shadow, the light is coming from the top right. And now I can, let's turn off this layer. Now I can paint in all these shadows. So this is how I would start with painting this character. And then sometimes I also make separate layers for example, what I also do a lot is making this folder, Ctrl G. I select this color and put it on a mask in this folder. Then I make a separate layer for the upper arm, like this here. And I also make a mask of it, and then I start to paint that in. So now you see that I can draw here, but I'm drawing on that arm. So it helps me with shading. So then I can add maybe some highlights here. And then I can start drawing on the beer again, and I can paint this here. And there's shadow from under this guitar going like this. Going here. So yeah, and then I could just keep adding. And if you find it difficult to draw shadow and light, let me give a quick explanation of how I do that, or the technique behind. So we have this ball, and this ball is basically then the bear, and the light is coming from this side, and it's in the front, so it's more like this. So put this icon on, and then let's shade this ball. So like here. So here's dark, darker, dark, dark, because there's shadow. And I want this edge to be a bit softer, and that's called the terminator. So this is the center light, but there's also, if something is shiny, then this would have an highlight, but it's soft. So just place little soft highlight. So that's, yeah, because the bear has this soft, this soft fur. I want to have something like this. So, but if this ball is on the ground, you would also have cast shadow. And you can draw that in like this. So there's the shadow. So what I normally would do is, since this is a ball, I can draw this shape. No. Fill it. Maybe make it a bit. So now we have this shadow color, and we can transform it a bit like this here. And now we can take this layer and do filter, blur, Gaussian blur, to make it blurry, because shadows are a bit blurry, especially when they're a bit farther away. So I'm not going too much in depth about it, but this part is closer, so this is a bit sharper. So I made another tutorial more explaining this. So this is the really basic, but there's also some light bouncing from the ground on this ball from the ground. So that's why this side is also a bit lighter. And let's make this again a bit darker. So let's continue. So that's the basics of how I paint character, and basically that's almost all the technique I use for that. So here I'm showing more. Yeah, this is basically the same as the bear, maybe only a bit more detailed. And you can see that I break it down in all these small steps. So yeah, I would advise you to do that as well. So everything is a bit like the ball. So, but only is different shapes. So that's also why it's so important to think in these wireframed shapes. For example, pen pressure. So for example, we have this character. You can think of it in these shapes like this. And that. So now, and this helps also with the lightning, because if you can think of the lightning on these objects, so here's shadow, you break it down in shape, so it's easier to lighten them all. And I think I'm showing that in the next example. And if you find that a bit hard, first training with values is really valuable. So, for example, what I did here, I start with this. Sometimes, let me just start drawing an head. So here we have a head. Then there's this nose, and this hair, maybe this chin. So, and then there's light from the top. So here this is lighten up, and this is lighten up, and there's also light from top there and on the chin. So going like this. Then there's also this highlight. So this is a great way to start practicing. Maybe you start learning a bit to color like this. And I would advise maybe take an start with a sketch first, or else you get these silly drawings like me. But you can maybe we can take one of these. For example, do I have this sketch? Do you have a good sketch somewhere? Should have, right? Maybe you can take one of these sketches like this here. Here, where were we? Oh, I could have taken this one. So what I mean with value is maybe take this this character, make it a bit bigger, put it on multiply, and then we can start drawing. First, you start with the big shape, like this. So like that. And then fill it with paint bucket tool, with the gray. make this layer a bit softer, so like this. And now we can start adding shading in it. So, and the big handy thing about using shading first is because you don't have to think about all the colors and stuff like that, and the values are so important. And now so first try to block in the big shapes first, so like this, and practice this and you will get better at it. And maybe you can look at some more examples I made earlier, because I can't show the whole process now. Maybe make some reflective light here. Maybe you want to even make this a bit darker. And play around with this and practice and take your time to learn this. So until you have something you like. So, and for example, here I gave this character value. And then what you can do then is make a new layer, take a color here, on this color thing, and put this layer on color here on top of it. Now you can fill color in the colors. And it's not super great yet, but you can add that. So make these white and make these, maybe these eyes are purple, these lips are red. So now you can start thinking of the color and start tweaking stuff. So now it doesn't look at anything, but you can definitely get a good result with this. And it's great because you're separating the value from the coloring part, and it makes it a bit easier. So here I'm also showing the painting, and I personally use directly with color more, because for me, then I have more control over colors, but it's only a bit harder to get your values right that way. But what you also can do for that is you can make an extra layer, and if you want to check your values, make a new layer and fill that layer with white or black and put it on color, and then you get a gray-white check thing, and then you can check if you like the values or not. So let's talk about inking and shading. So ink and cel shaded. So that's for more if you want to make cartoons that are cel shaded. I think at classic cartoons. So in Photoshop, then I use a brush, a hard brush. So I put on the transfer, put on only the shape dynamics. And in Photoshop, there's this nice option smoothing. So if you put that smoothing on 90, you can get these really smooth lines. Photoshop calculates for that. So that's great for inking. Start with a rough sketch, yeah, but what I already told. Check the silhouette, color the shapes in separate layers. If you're making a character, it's also really good to, for example, if you have a character this with clothing, it's good to think about color theory. And I'm only explaining one here, and there are way more. So with this character, I choose purple and yellow. But you can also use, and this is called a complementary color scheme. So you can also pick green and then take the color on the different side, that's orange. So we call this a color wheel. Oh. And now we're drawing with a color scheme. And this color scheme is called complementary colors. Oh, so let's give him a green shirt and orange pens. So that's basically it, and then you get nice color combinations, and you have more of these different sets. So if you want to find more, yeah, you can find it on my Instagram or different tutorials about that, or you can Google for color schemes to learn more about that. You can also color your lines, and I'm using that a lot when I'm drawing these cartoon characters. So, and I also already shown that thing. So if you have these lines and you want to give him these different color, you can select a different color and put this icon on. And now you can draw within the shape. So if this icon is turned off, you're drawing over it. But if it's turned on, you can draw within this shape. So that can be really handy for different kind of ways. So perspective, basically it's a whole different beast. But I can explain something about basic perspective. So you start drawing a horizon line. So maybe take 2-pixel line. So here, so this is the horizon line. So like this. And then you can make, for example, I often start then with a really rough sketch. So I want to make a house, something like this here. So you want to draw that house in perspective. So then you decide, here's perspective point 1, or we also call that vanishing point 1. And then maybe we put here finishing point 2. And in different tutorial, I explain more about it. I just want to cover the basics here. So now you can add lines from this point here. And I also made a brush for that purpose. So here, this brush, if I place it here, you have all these lines going there. And I can also place it here. So yeah. And then I maybe give this one a different color. So like this here. And in Photoshop, you can also, yeah, you can make a brush like this yourself, or you can use the line tool here. So here, put this a bit softer. Now we have perspective grid. And we can draw on top of this grid. So here I'm drawing on this grid a house or a box first. First draw a box. Then you can start thinking of, oh, that box needs a roof. Then you know from this point it goes to this point, to this vanishing point, and then here. And I'm now working on all these new perspective tutorials, and also made some on my Patreon, so I don't want to get in depth, also because then this video would get too long. So now you can draw in the house and the window. So I'm drawing on this grid. So that is what I wanted to explain with this tutorial. Here I'm showing more on how to draw a street. It's basically the same thing with that 2-point perspective. So I'm also using 3D to draw, to help me with perspective. So what I did here, I started with basic, here you can see it, these basic shapes modeling this spaceship. And then when I have this spaceship, I literally just make a screenshot. And I think I've made this in Blender. Blender is a free 3D program, so it's really useful to learn that program. Even if you don't want to become a 3D artist, it's great to learn to how this. So I've put in these boxes to help me determine the vanishing points. So then I start adding these these lines to find the perspective grid. So when I have that, so when I have this whole line grid of lines, I can start adding all the details of that spaceship. So here's another example of using basic 3D, and then I just make screenshots and use it. So it's also what I didn't talk about is using reference. Reference is really important. So here I was drawing this this living room, and I wanted to make a hamster that hunts on animals. So it's a hunter. So I looked on Google for hunter stuff. So like this, and that adds really to your story. So always do research and make a mood board. We call this a reference or mood board. So try using that when you're want to make a cool environment with a nice story. So background color. So basically it's the same as with the crocodile, but only a bit different. So what I do is I block in these big shapes with the lasso tool, and then I start shading them one for one, like I've shown with the ball. And with backgrounds, it takes a lot more time, and watch out for using too much different colors. So start with just, for example, a color scheme, and that's where the color scheme is handy for. So I use blue and red a lot, and later I added some more tones, but I let the red here, and I use a bluish green. So don't use too much colors for that. And what's really interesting with if you're drawing an environment, put the horizon line on 1/3 and avoid the middle. And you can use shapes. Think of so I could explain that now quickly. So if you have your frame and you divide that by 3, you have the rule of thirds. And then you decide what you want to tell. So I wanted to make a boat, and I put that on this point, a boat that is going to this fire, to this lighthouse. So that's here. So then you put something. So now there's something on this point and there's something on this point. So that makes it interesting. And that's the rule of thirds. Rule of thirds. And then you can add some more background stuff. But the shapes I add are pointing to the things I want. So here are rocks, and that's pointing to that. So I'm using these rough shapes, and I'm using them to guide the eye. Again, I'm telling more about that in different tutorials, but I wanted to give some basics about this. So rough sketch. That is, so I start with these complicated drawings. I start with a really rough sketch and put the perspective grid on top of it, and then I started adding details. And I keep adding details and have something like that. So it is basically just putting a lot of time and calculation in it. This is what I was explaining just now, the rule of thirds. And this also with, so the color is, so if you make a new layer, put it on top. So you have the values, you put this on color, and you add this blue. You almost already have this lightened scene, especially since it's night scene. You can use all this blue. You can maybe use some different hues blue, maybe a bit of purple in the foreground, and maybe a bit of greenish in the background. So, and you can add more tones to it as much as you like. So I wanted to end with telling about Sketchbook. So If you want to progress as an artist, having a sketchbook with you is really important. Um, how I and that's also how I grow my Instagram is because I was going to work, and every day I was in the train, like you can see here. I was drawing in the train, people around me, um, and I learned a lot by that. So what I would advise you is buy a sketchbook, and maybe you're traveling to work a lot in the train, and then you can perfectly sketch in the train. Or maybe you don't have that, but maybe you have lunch breaks on work time or in school, and you can use that time to also have a sketchbook and sketch in it. And it's also sketching in public is also really great because you get used to that people are around you when you are sketching. So that's really useful. And some people ask me how to come up with different themes and what to draw. What I just do is one day I just draw crocodiles, the other day I draw aliens, the other day I do figure drawing, and so on. So I try to play around with that. So just pick something and start drawing. Don't stuck too much in thinking. Just draw a lot because that will make you a better artist. And also about what sketchbook I use, that doesn't really matter. I don't like to buy really expensive sketchbooks because, or else I would worry too much about spending too much expensive paper. And also using a ballpoint pen is also really great and stuff like that. And also when you're drawing, don't erase too much because it's useful to learn to. So if you are drawing and then if you make a mistake, just keep drawing. Maybe draw a bit on top of that mistake. And if you don't like the drawing at all, just finish it and then start on the next drawing. So that is what I wanted to tell. So, and if you want to have some questions, or you want me to send some drawings, you can tag me in Instagram, and I will do my best to look at it and maybe give some tips. And so, thanks everyone for watching this video, and I hope you liked it. And I hope to see you in a different video. So thanks everyone. Have a great day.